Hello, Black Healing Matters family. This is Danielle here at the Black Healing Matters podcast, where we offer you ideas to hopefully move you one step closer to your healing. And today, I hope to deliver to you a little bit of historical healing. Yes, you know, it is Tuesday, and that means it is Know Thy History Tuesday. And today I'm going to take a little bit of a detour from our normal historical talk. And let's talk a little bit about something that maybe, you may not know about Africa. And so when we talk about Africa today in modern terms, most of us are familiar with the fact that most of Africa was colonized by Europeans. And of course, that happened. Yes, it did. If you're familiar with the history, in 1880, just 10% of African land and tribes were colonized. And 30 years later, at the beginning of the 20th century, the ratio had changed to nearly 90%. Wow. 90% of the colonized were colonized and 10% were independent territories. And so that leads me to today's topic because oftentimes I don't know about you, but I want to speak for myself and say, I did not realize that there was any place in Africa that had not been colonized. I just assumed that the entire continent, every single country, everywhere had been colonized. And that is not true. And so today's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about the nations that were not colonized by Europeans in Africa. Number one, there are only a few now. Number one is Liberia. Now, the reason why this country has never been colonized is because it was created artificially. The mystery is hidden in its very name. The state was formed in 1839 by white people of America. These abolitionists did not think that African Americans had any place to live in the United States. So they thought that the liberated slaves had to go back to their own land, Africa. That is why they founded Liberia. The first freed slaves arrived in this land in 1821, even before the state was formed. Actually, Liberia was a colony, but a different kind of it. It was colonized by Black people. Interesting. Again, we're talking about freed slaves that came back to Africa. Although for a while it belonged to the United States, and only in 1847 the colony gained its complete independence. But up until that time, it was ruled by a white minority who transferred authority to the blacks. Formerly, this land was known as Guyane or Pepper Coast. It was inhabited with natives who moved here from the northern African regions. Over the last 100 years, Liberia has survived many wars and military coups. It has elected its president and has endured severe Ebola outbreaks in 2014. So, Liberia is the first country that was um, not technically colonized by a European country. And the second and last country that has never been colonized by Europeans is Ethiopia. Again, this is the second African state that escaped total colonization of this continent of Africa. Ethiopia has a long history and great kingdoms existed on this territory. It is one of the African countries that had become Christian at the very crack of dawn of Christianity. Italy was the state that made several attempts to colonize Ethiopia, or at that time it was known as Abyssinia. First shot that Italy took to colonize Ethiopia was in the 1880s, but it failed. And the second attempt was also carried out by Mussolini in 1935, and it also failed. For a few years until 1941, this land was in war and under partial Italian rule. But later on, it got back to its independence. For almost 2 decades, from 1974 to 1991, Ethiopia, as many other African countries, was a part of the communist camp. Presently, it is a federal democratic republic. So, I hope you learned something today, as I did. First off, I learned that not all countries in Africa have been colonized. As well, we learned about the two countries, Ethiopia and Liberia, that were not under European rule, not complete European rule at any point in time. All right. I hope you learned something today as well as I did. As always, Black Healing Matters family, stay blessed. Black Healing Matters.
The podcast you just heard was recorded with Anchor. If you want to make your own, download the Android or iOS app completely free from anchor.fm/podcast. That's anchor.fm/podcast.